Well, this was a tough list to make, but here we go. I don't need to remind you of this, but this is just my personal opinion, it's subjective. You may politely disagree with it, but you're entitled to your wrong opinion, deal with that. Please don't forget to leave your main comments. I tried to be 100% fair and look for the absolute best finishers that checks all the different boxes. The criteria here is not to rank the flashiest and coolest moves in wrestling or solely focus on the moves that could possibly kill you in real life. It's a top 20 list of the most iconic finishers in wrestling, the ones that stick out the most and that in my humble opinion are the gold standards of the perfect match ending move. So without further ado, I'm MAH and let's rank them. Number 20, Michinoku Driver II. Starting up the list with a move that was created by and named after a jobber in WWE. No, in all seriousness, the Michinoku Driver was a great move in the late 90s. It's very smooth and it's simple but looks painful at the same time. It's good enough that lots of wrestlers in the industry started using it ever after. And I do think that Taka Michinoku needed to be recognized enough. Number 19, Witherspeak. The Witherspeak, also known as the gory neck breaker, is such a criminally underrated move. It's so creative and to Victoria's credit she makes it look really effective and painful. Her execution is always on point and she always gets the 3 counts when she uses it. Fun fact, Molly Holly actually saw 14-year-old Roderick Strong doing the Witherspeak on the Andy show and she gave it to Victoria to use. Number 18, the diving elbow drop. Before it became the standard finisher setup for every wrestler on the planet, the diving elbow drop was a prestigious move in the 80s. It was spectacular, the highest of high-risk maneuvers, and was all over with the crowd. And for its time, it looked like a move that could actually hurt real bad, probably due to how great Randy Savage used to do it. The same definitely can be said about CM Punk. But Kairi Sane on the other hand has an insane elbow drop. She sure made the Macho Man proud. Number 17, End of Heartache. There have been various backbreaker finishers in wrestling, but the slickest, most badass and certainly most painful looking is the End of Heartache by the messiah of the backbreaker himself, Roderick Strong. The setup of the move never fails to impress me. He grabs his opponent for what it looks like a suplex, but he throws his opponent midway in the air and then quickly sets his knee up as the opponent falls on his back and receives the final payoff of the move, and it's not pleasant at all. From the smooth transition to how high the opponents can get, the End of Heartache always looks cool and he needs to do it more nowadays instead. Number 16, Razor's Edge. The Razor's Edge was my go-to finishing move in WWE games. That doesn't matter that much to you, but I really think this move is really awesome and should be celebrated more. It's so crazy to me that he first started using it in 91, it's really ahead of its time from a technicality standpoint. I appreciate how he took the effort to pick a finishing move that looks believable and effective. Even after 30 years, you can't say the same about 85 of the moves back then, and when he did it on jobbers, he fucking killed them, which made him look good in the process. Homicide and Sheamus did put their spin on the move and they did good versions. Number 15, Pile Driver Suplex. Every time I mention Scott Steiner, I have to always remind people that he used to be one hell of an athlete and one of the most agile wrestlers in his prime. He used to bust impressive moves left and right like an indie wrestler. Although I love the Frankensteiner so much, the Steiner Screwdriver was his best finisher. It's a vertical suplex into sitting tombstone pile driver, and I have to say it's my favorite variation of the pile driver. It's a legit spectacular and impressive move to use in that time. I still find it really impressive even today with the amount of the top moves that you see per match. My only concern though is I hope it doesn't really hurt as much as it looks, because it doesn't look nice for the neck. Number 14, Cattle Mutilation. Besides using it in his match against Kenny in AEW Dynamite recently, Bryan actually hasn't used this move since 2010. In fact, he retired it because WWE wasn't big on it, and to that I say that's rubbish. The Cattle Mutilation was legendary Ring of Honor. After beating his opponent's head with multiple elbows, he would lock it and guarantee the victory. It was like his last resort if his opponent is still alive, and few managed to escape it, and those who did, they're never the same. Bryan ruled Ring of Honor. His title reign was phenomenal. He needed a killer submission move to submit him as a hard-hitting technical bastard, and the Cattle Mutilation was the perfect fit. Number 13, Muscle Buster. The Muscle Buster is one of the most killer-looking wrestling moves, and for a guy like Samoa Joe to use, it couldn't find a more suitable wrestler. He owns it. He makes it look devastating and dangerous, but safe at the same time. Don't take what happened with Tyson Kidd into consideration. That was an unfortunate accident, and that happens a lot in wrestling. It feels like a violation to ban Joe from using the move. It made him look more of a savage, and it became part of his wrestling persona. While the cocaine clutch is a great submission move, I just feel like the muscle buster was a great reason you would be terrified to step in the ring with Joe. He just looks like he's gonna kill you with that move. Number 12. Crippler crossface. The crossface has always been in wrestling, but some does it better than the others, and no one does it better than the Rabbit Wolverine. He made it look like he's about to choke you to death. Wow, that sounded a bit dark. He really perfected the use of the crossface. Maybe it's his intensity, or the way he locked his hands, or it may be simply because of the proper execution, which is something that few get it right, but not quite as good. It has to do also with his counters, how he will grab you and position you for the lock. It became like an out-of-nowhere move that you would hardly see it coming, and it's hard to escape from. And I love the fact that he won his first and only WWE World Heavyweight title by tapping out Triple H with a Crippler crossface. Number 11. The Canadian Destroyer. Everyone remembers the first time they saw the Canadian Destroyer. I personally remember being blown away and I had so many questions. To say that this move didn't keep me awake at night is a lie. I still wake up sometimes and wonder how Petey Williams come up with this brilliant move. It takes a genius to think of this, and I'm not exaggerating. It's a crime against humanity to see this move be downgraded to just a transition spot nowadays. It's quite disrespectful actually. It's a move that should be just reserved for the finish. It loses its appeal if you see it used just as a move before the real finisher. That aside, thank you Petey Williams for blessing us with one of the most spectacular and fascinating wrestling moves ever created. Number 10. Lion Tamer. Chris Jericho may like to use the walls of Jericho more often, but everyone and their mothers know that the Lion Tamer was the superior submission. You can't convince us otherwise. In fact, it should be his permanent finisher to the day he retires. No matter how many new finishing moves he comes up with, nothing will ever be compared to this bad boy. Look at the way he bends those knees. You can't tell me that that doesn't hurt like hell. The knees are not supposed to be bent that way. Maybe that explains why he does it on fewer guys. I always feel the sudden pain each time he applies it. It's like I'm the one receiving it. It looks really rigid and it's near impossible to escape or break out from, which is a great case why you should use it at least as a last resort. It gets a huge pop each time he does it. It's a thing of beauty, that's why. It makes the Boston Crab look like crap in comparison. Number 9. GTS. The Kenta version, that is. Can you believe how insulted Kenta must have felt like when CM Punk started using it? You're not doing it right if your opponent is not going to sleep. You must kick his fucking head off like how badass Kenta does it. And also, wise advice, don't tell Kenta that CM Punk does it better, cause he might give you one and then you won't be saying the same thing. But enough about Punk. The fact that Kenta debuted the move so he can manage to defeat the legendary Misawa after his shotgun kick failed to score the victory really put over GTS as a legitimate finisher, and it took off ever since. I seriously can watch Kenta knock in people's faces with his knee all day long. It's so good. Besides, look at this perfect counter. Isn't it the greatest thing ever? This is why I love Kenta. When he hits you with his knees, you're really fucked. Number 8. The 3D. Look, we can argue all day long about what is the most over tag team maneuver between the Doomsday Device and the 3D, but I have to say, I don't hear people screaming Doomsday Device when they see the moves coming. The thrill you get every time you see Bubba Ray Dudley preparing himself to go for the cutter is wonderful. The 3D is the move that never fails to get a pop whether they're heels or faces. You really want to see it either ways. What's not to like about the 3D, honestly? The slickest, smoothest, coolest looking tag team wrestling finisher out there. It's not overly complicated, it's simple, but the execution is all what matters. And it's a thing of beauty. And you know it's over when they do it. The move is so protected that there's only 2 wrestlers that kicked out of the move throughout their entire run. Number 7. The Spear Jackhammer combo. It wouldn't be fair to just count the spear alone without the other half of this finisher combo. He doesn't do it alone, although he has arguably the best looking spear out of all. He used to hit it like he's aiming to really kill his opponent. It looked scary, and the same couldn't be said about Edge's if you call that a spear. He could just pin his opponent right after his vicious spear, but no, he wanted to torture them and make sure they're dead by delivering the jackhammer. That's when you know he's victorious. I like to pretend his current run doesn't count, so I'm referring to his prime because that's the only Goldberg I know. His finisher combo cemented him as this dangerous monster in WCW and made him the biggest star in that company. He couldn't find a better finisher, nothing would go as over anyway. At least nothing can make his title win over Hogan more iconic. Number 6. Rainmaker. Oh boy, do I really love this finisher. I never thought that a standard lariat could be this good, let alone be a very convincing finisher for a main event level wrestler such as Okada. I'm underestimating Japanese, cause they really do make every move sound and look like it's going to kill somebody. Cross lines or lariat usually will barely get you 2 counts, but not Kazuchika Okada's Rainmaker. That shit will knock you out. Like even a running lariat doesn't look like it's going to tear your head off. No disrespect to Stan Hansen, but just the sounds itself, my god, is so satisfying. It sounds like a gunshot, and probably hurts like one too. Number 5. The Burning Hammer. When we talk about the most protected finishers in wrestling, there's a few that comes to mind. The 3D, the Punk Kick, the Razor's Edge, hell, even the Cobra was protected. But the one that was built as a move that would guarantee match victory, a move that no one kicked out from, a move that was used only 7 times and was saved as a last resort, is Kenta Kobashi's The Burning Hammer. And when you see it, you really can't judge why it's so protected or why did he really use it. Because dear god, it looks scary painful, but that's why it was his last resort. When you're desperate for a victory, you gotta break somebody's neck. You have to go that far to win a very important match. And that gave the move such a special aura about it. Like something terribly bad is gonna happen kind of aura. It's a terrifying experience to be on the receiving end of the Burning Hammer, but it's also a great honor. You drove Kenta Kobashi to the point where he uses the Burning Hammer to defeat you. That's how much of a big deal the move is. Number 4. The One-Winged Angle. Since we're talking about protected finishers in wrestling, I left out the One-Winged Angle on purpose, so I can get to it right now. The One-Winged Angle is Kenny Omega's main finisher and he has been using it for years. And there is only one wrestler who has kicked out of the move, and that man is Kota Ibushi, and that's impressive and damn sure refreshing to see a move that legit and believable. When you watch Okada vs Kenny Omega from Wrestle Kingdom 11, the whole story of the match is Omega desperately trying to go for his trademark move, but Okada's not letting that happen and always counters any attempt, which is why he retains the championship in the end. But at the Dominion show, Kenny was able to give Okada the One-Winged Angle, and then and only then he was able to overcome the Rainmaker and ends his 720 days title reign. Even the great Kazuchika Okada wasn't able to kick out and retain his title. The One-Winged Angle is also arguably the most protected finisher in AEW. He won the title and has successfully retained it several times, all thanks to his glorious move, and that puts the finisher high on this list. Number 3. The Sweet Shim music. Believe it or not, the super kick was a spectacular move in the 90s. I know, that's really hard to comprehend. You also might be shocked to hear that it was used as a finisher move as well. NANI? What happened is, a lot of wrestlers grew up watching Shawn Michaels, and just like any other fan at the time, they were obsessed with the Sweet Shim music, and everybody wanted to be as cool as a childhood idol performing the move. But they ended up ruining the prestige of the move. Shawn Michaels created an iconic finishing move, and it wasn't technical or complicated. It was quick, smooth and damn sure cool, and made everybody excited to see it every time he goes to the corner and does his famous taunt. It wasn't about how accurate looking it is, it was about how cool he made it look. We believed it, we popped when he did it, and we tried to do it on our siblings too. Number 2. The Stone Cold Stunner. I feel like there is no reason to debate why the Stunner is so high on this list. I mean, maybe you can argue why it's not number 1, because there is no more iconic move than the Stunner. I mean, you can even hear the loud pops when you hear the word Stunner. It's a simple move, and describing how it physically works might be quite a struggle, but for whatever reason it works, and it works so fucking great. Even the kick before the Stunner makes a huge difference. That's what gets the crowd ready for the huge pop, and it wouldn't work with any other wrestler. Sorry Kevin, it's tailor-made for the Stone Cold character, and that's the bottom line. Before people begin to ask where certain moves are, this was a really difficult list to put together and some moves didn't make the cut, unfortunately. But here's some honorable mentions instead. Number 1. RKO. Bro, this move made it to meme culture. There should be no argument here. It's the best finishing move in wrestling and no one has the right to disagree with that statement. It just doesn't require strength or high level athleticism, it's all about the perfect timing and execution, and when it comes to those two, man, does Randy kills it every time. He's the master of counters and knowing exactly when to go for the finisher and make it look exciting. From the various epic mid-air RKOs, the shooting star into an RKO, a power bomb into an RKO, a freaking curb stomp into an RKO, the RKO out of nowhere will always guarantee a pop from the crowd. It's just a thing of beauty, and the level of unpredictability when delivering the RKO made him really earn the Viper's nickname. And that is that. we reached the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment as well. I'm MH, and I'll see you soon. Tschüss!